Hello and welcome to the Geo Week 2021 side event on biological Earth observations in support of transformative commitments and sustainable development. Sorry for the small delay that we have a moment ago, and we are almost ready to start. We just want to make sure that people there are getting ready for this event, getting comfortable wherever you are, and we'll be resuming shortly with this session. I appreciate if my colleague Adriana from Giovanni can share the screen to the presentation that I'm going to use just to introduce this side event, and then we'll be ready to start. I'm not. Welcome everyone. Yes. Also, we have our colleague Joanna. She just welcomed you. She's from Marine Bond. She just welcomed you in the chat. And please, if you have any questions or issues, just let us know and we'll take care of them there. Thank you, Adriana. I can see the screen now. I hope everybody else does too. Well, thank you, Adriana, for putting my bio there. This is just to introduce myself. My name is Rafael Monge. I'm the director of the National Center of Geoenvironmental Information at the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'll be the moderator of this side event and of this joint side event between the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, GeoBond, Marine Bond, and UNDP. If you may, Adriana, let's go to the agenda. First, I want to tell you that this session will address how standardized, actionable biodiversity knowledge is being built, showcase recently developed monitoring tools that support the detection and analysis of biodiversity change, and present case studies that show how countries are using this data and tools to harmonize policy and action for biodiversity conservation and the sustainable development goals. Here you can see the agenda that we have prepared for you today in this 2-hour event. And we have 2 blocks here where we're going to ask you to engage with us and participate in this side event with a dynamic that we created for it, so we can also get your feedback. Well, in this, we're going to start the session in the first hour, and we're going to use a Jamboard. A Jamboard is a collaborative board that we can use, that we have prepared to ask the first questions of this side event. Well, you can see also this agenda. I'm not going through all of those items, but there's a link to the GeoBond blog where you can find also the information of this side event and the agenda, so you can follow it up, and also the information from the speakers that will be addressing to you. Again, if we can share the screen to the Jamboard first, so we can start that request for colleagues to help us answer these questions that we're going to see in the beginning of the session. Ask you to collaborate there, and then in the end of the first half of the session, we're going to look at them together, and after that, we're going to do that again for the second half with the other 2 sets of questions. Oh, thank you. There's the Jamboard. Well, I don't know if you're acquainted to this platform. Can you go back to the first one? For the instructions, it's really easy to use. There's a link in the chat. I hope it's already there. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Joanna, for sharing it. What we ask you is just to put stickers in the question that we have prepared for you, and it's just 1, 2, 3 steps to go. So what the questions are, the first one is, what are the challenges to access and use data? And the other one is, what is needed to validate data for national use? The presentations that we're going to see in the first half are somehow addressing these questions, but we want also to know your opinions, what you want to highlight from those presentations, and put them in this Jamboard. There are two screens which you can use for answering these questions. And as you can see, you just have to click on the sticker and put your idea there, and feel free to put it in the board anywhere you want. And if you're out of space in this first slide, you can use the next one. And if there's more engagement, we just create more slides. That's really easy. So with that, I hope to clear a little bit about what's the dynamic of this session. Thanks a lot for joining us again. We can start with the first presentation. Just let me look at it. This is from a colleague from Latin America, Maria Cecilia Londoño, who is a senior researcher at Instituto Humboldt, and also she's co-chair of ViewBond. Please, we can continue with that. Thanks a lot.
My name is Maria Cecilia Londoño, and I will give you in these 5 minutes a little explanation of my vision of how biodiversity monitoring is related and most of all needed for sustainable territories. Okay, we are all aware of the biodiversity crisis, meaning that all living forms on Earth, their interactions and processes are changing. And given the complexity of ecological process, we still cannot fully understand the consequences of that global change. But we know for sure that at the very end, humans will be highly affected. So, decision for conservation, for conserving biodiversity and reducing the multiple drivers of change are happening at multiple scales. Here we have an example both in the figure and in the table of how the different stakeholders involved in different scales respond to different needs. So, for example, at the global and national scales, we have decision process such or driven by the multilateral agreements, and at the local level, we find that those decisions are mainly guided by the particular interest of the landowners and land managers. But we have also seen that many times the data used for making the decision at the local scale could be scaled up and used for decisions in the subnational, national, or even in the in the negotiations of these multilateral agreements. So in the decision making process, a key part is the monitoring. We have here in the left of your screen a red cycle that represents the adaptive management cycle, and part of this cycle is the circle you are seeing on the right related to the cycle of monitoring. So you can think of the monitoring cycle as the gear that makes it possible to plan and evaluate actions and management, for example, of biodiversity conservations through adaptive management process. But not all countries have the same capacity and opportunities to have good data and enough data on that monitoring cycle. We can see in these two papers I'm citing here how biodiversity is not evenly distributed across the globe, and you can see how the biodiversity data is biased towards Europe and North America mainly. So this uneven distribution of available data is a mirror of the currently divided world that we live on. So we have this global rich north with a lot of data and capacity to analyze that data and make decisions, and the global poor south with not enough data and not enough capacities to do that same type of analysis. So when thinking about biodiversity monitoring, we have two main research questions related to sustainability. And the first one is, how can environmental monitoring be expanded or integrated towards advancing to sustainability for guiding that sustainability process at the different scales? And the second question is how can all the research, planning, and the decision supports activities around biodiversity monitoring be better integrated into the adaptive management and social learning systems of the different countries and at the different scales where monitoring is important. Now, for answering these questions, the values related to open science and open access are key. In the bullets, you can see the values of the open science and open access frameworks, and you can see that the first four are more related to the social impacts of science. We believe that we really need to focus on those four values if we want environmental data to really guide decisions at the different scales and across the globe. So finally, all countries should be able, with their own capacities, to implement the learning cycle and assess how and why biodiversity is changing and to improve their management actions. We need to think in biodiversity monitoring as part of the sustainability problem so that equity in data access and data analysis is improved and we can finally have a global biodiversity observation system that could fulfill a diversity of scales from local to global. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot to Maria Cecilia for this very interesting presentation. And now we move forward with our agenda with Frank Mueller Carter from MBON. Frank, if you want to take the floor, you're live with us right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me know if you can see the slides, please.
I can hear you and yes, we see your slides.
Thank you very much. There seems to be a lag. I'm going to expand on what Maria Cecilia mentioned. We all really want to understand how life is changing. And on a global level, we also need to understand how the ocean is changing. There have been very large investments into ocean observing systems, and yet we have no systematic effort to observe life in the sea in a monitoring sense. And so what we want to do is characterize biodiversity in different marine ecosystems. Just as Maria described, we want to take databases and data sets and be able to filter them through taxa or space and in time, and to produce indicators in the form of maps or track abundance and look at trends. But to do that, we need to understand how we can compare data from one place to another and over time. And the only way to do that is standardizing things. And this is the difficulty that we have had in biology and in trying to quantify biodiversity. We're now trying to do that through the framework of ocean observing. In the ocean, we are using the essential ocean variables framework that is sort of a derivative of the essential climate variables. Essential ocean variables are the raw measurements that we would need to go and make maps, and make maps that can be used to monitor things in space and over time. And those maps is what we call essential biodiversity variables. So they're the type of traits or amount of species in one location, or the genetic composition across locations and over time. So these essential biodiversity variables are really nothing more than raw measurements of, for example, microbes or plankton or invertebrates, fish, or turtle, birds, or mammal, or we can group them through habitat states like coral or macroalgae, seagrass, and mangrove. We're trying to do that now with a number of technologies. There's a very large explosion in technologies that allow us to do these kinds of things in near real time, but also to share the data more openly, to make time series and then time series of maps and everything from microbes that can be used through submersible microscopes to satellite data, and a very large effort in genomics or eDNA. Core to all of this, everything really revolves around data and information management. So if we take the raw field data that we have now, and each one of us does our own thing and keeps the data on our own standards or deposits them in our own favorite database, it will be very difficult to compare anything. So one big effort that we have in the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network is try to walk through several standards, or standards for taxonomy, standards for omics, standards for sound data underwater, sound for, or how do we establish standards for satellite data products that can be used to look at biogeography. So we can walk from raw data to quality control data, and then host the data in common and open databases that can then be used to look at data views, such as what we're calling infographics. One critical tool that we're using is the Oceanbestpractices.org. There's an Ocean Best Practices system that is housed at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, and this is the website. It's a repository of methods and standards that we're trying to walk to the community, and it's open access. So anybody can deposit, everybody can extract. An example here for taxa, if we want to look at how we walk through this framework, this is the data flow, that we would take field observations of taxa, store them in the Darwin Core standard formats, and then open it up and URDAP to the world so they're available to be extracted or collected by OBIS or GBIF, and then other people can make anything that they want with this, including indicators. An example is this, where we take the information into what we're calling these infographics, where we have silhouettes of organisms in a particular environment. You can click on the silhouette and you get a time series. And so you can compare over time, but you can also compare across locations. So thank you very much. This is my email. If you want to get in contact with us at MBON, please write me a note, carib@usf.edu. And we're also involved in the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development through a project called Marine Life 2030. So please look that up. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Frank, for that presentation. Very interesting. And just as a quick reminder to all the people out there that are joining this side event, we invite you to join us in a Jamboard that we have link in the chat. So you can provide us your feedback about the questions that we are trying to respond during this side event with our speakers, but also with your help. Thank you very much again to Frank for this presentation. Going back to the agenda, I would like to give the floor to continue with the presentation from Howard Epstein from GeoVon. Please, we can put that on screen. Thanks a lot.
I'm going to talk about our project to develop an ecosystem functional classification and ecosystem functional diversity product for the circumpolar Arctic tundra. You can see my co-authors are listed there. We use the 16-day MODIS composite NDVI, specifically 3 functional attributes of the mean seasonal NDVI curve related to magnitude and phenology. We use the mean NDVI, the date of the start of the growing season, and the date of peak NDVI. We bind those variables and combine them into 45 unique ecosystem functional types. You can see the histogram, frequency histogram of the ecosystem functional types at the to the right at the bottom. Each of those dominant colors represent one bin for the mean NDVI. And then those ecosystem functional types were projected onto the image of the circumpolar Arctic tundra above. We can upscale ecosystem functional types to develop an ecosystem functional diversity product. Ecosystem functional diversity, in other words, is the functional type richness. Here is a map for the circumpolar Arctic tundra. The darker red areas have greater ecosystem functional diversity compared to the lighter areas. In other words, their landscapes are more functionally heterogeneous. We homed in on the Amal Peninsula in northwestern Siberia to analyze the regional trends in functional diversity and their controls. The map on the left is ecosystem functional type richness. The darker green and red areas indicate landscapes with high functional diversity, whereas the areas that are yellow are landscapes with only a single ecosystem functional type. The map in the center looks at functional diversity trends from 2001 to 2018. The darker blue areas are significantly positive trends. The darker brown areas are significantly negative trends. 30% of the Amal Peninsula had positive trends, 2.8% had negative trends. We used a regression tree analysis to evaluate the controls on diversity trends. Distance from coast, precipitation, human modification were all positively related to functional diversity, whereas elevation and distance from water were negatively related to functional diversity. We then used our functional diversity product for a gap analysis. We compared our functional diversity map to that of the protected area of the circumpolar Arctic tundra. The red circles represent potential gaps in conservation. Protected areas covered less than 17% of the areas of the rarest ecosystem functional types. We then looked at protection based on specific aspects of functionality. In other words, we looked at it based on the 3 ecosystem functional attributes that we used. Pulling information from the graphs on the left, we conclude that well-protected areas are those with high productivity, early start to the growing season, and early end to the growing season, and the poorly protected systems are those with low productivity, a late start to the growing season, and a late end to the growing season. To summarize our project outcomes, we developed a functional classification of the circumpolar Arctic tundra. We mapped functional diversity throughout the Arctic tundra. We identified the environmental controls on ecosystem function and functional diversity, and we utilized the data for a gap analysis of conservation. These tools that we developed are generalizable for other biomes around the globe and across spatial scales. Different remote sensing products can be used. We hope that these products and algorithms are used by GeoBond in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that presentation. How interesting from GeoBond. I don't know if you can listen to my dogs now. They wanted to participate also in this event. And they never miss any one of those events I have. Please remember to join us in the Jamboard. We have seen some interactions there, very interesting. Thank you for going there and providing your views on those questions that we have there for you. And right next in the agenda, we have Ruben Baldwin, also from GeoBond. He's going to have a live presentation. Thanks, Ruben, for joining us today. And please take the floor.
Thanks, Rafael. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Let me see how I can start sharing my screen. Yeah, that's working well, right? And you hear me well, right? Can you confirm that you see my presentation there?
I confirm that we hear you and we can see it.
Yeah, that's good. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm speaking today from Wales in the United Kingdom, but I've also been recently given a professorship in Sweden. So I'm adding that affiliation in there just for you guys to if you want to look for me later, also where you can find me in the future. I will be joining in Sweden very soon. And let me see. Yeah, that's working. So this talk is presenting this Amaseco project. We were covering the Amazon with the ecosystem structure EBB product made from satellite and airborne LiDAR. So this talk is about, it has a much narrower focus than others that you have seen before. It pertains to this ecosystem vertical profile that comes within the group of ecosystem structure EBBs. This is basically given by these sensors that are called LiDAR sensors, laser scanner sensors. And what we do, they provide information about the entire vertical profile of the ecosystem. And what we do is provide morphological traits of the ecosystems derived from there and try to standardize these. This is just the beginning of the whole picture, because all these can be used with other Earth observation tools to derive many other EBBs, more predominantly the biomass that is used for carbon issues, but there are many more that can be used to derive reliable estimations for species distributions and so on, the habitat structure, fragmentation, connectivity, and so on. But we start with the morphological traits that you see there on the left, and we have this wonderful data that is satellite, which is called JEDI, which give us, it was for most people, the first idea was on this data, because it just looks amazing. It's you see, so this is a lot of high data for all over the world. So very nice data that we can use for this purpose. The problem is that since we started since the beginning, we saw that there were several problems with this data. One of them is that, as you can see, it doesn't quite cover the whole of the world. It doesn't cover the area where I am just now. For example, it has a limitation of latitude given by the platform that is the International Space Station. And also it has a sampling nature, which is actually pretty sparse. It's a lot more data than you see in here, because this is just the first 3 months, but still is a sampling means of measuring. We don't get a continuous maps like in other remote sensing means, or at least not for the satellite data. So one of the first issues that we were discussing, we did this publication here about standardizing these morphological traits, and we were discussing that it was not enough with this satellite data of JEDI, that we need to involve other sources like the airborne data from which you can derive this more continuous information that is more typical. So we were figuring out what should be the means of harmonizing all this information that can be used. So and we did this Amaseco project to have a first demonstration about how this can be done. So what are the added values of these products that we have in Amaseco? Because we can find several products derived from this JEDI out there. But what we do is, well, first of all, we only take measurements. We don't estimate. And I will show what's the difference of that. Then we combine satellite with airborne, and that's the main means of what we provide. And we do that by accounting on the uncertainties of those measurements that we give. That's the way forward. And then we have, I will speak at the end, a philosophy for a crowdsourced product, for a product that is not created just by one person at a time or by one group at a time and deliver, but rather thinking of the tools so everybody can create their own products that are globally harmonized. So these are the first products of Amaseco that we got. We will hopefully very soon put them in the Geo portal. They are already by themselves proving very, very, very useful, and we can see in there on the naked eye, we can already see that there are areas where these products from satellite LiDAR can detect some type of deforestation happening in there, which wouldn't be that readily visible in the more conventional satellite imagery. So this is very promising. But in here, you can already see the first characteristic that is unique in our product, and is all those areas that are white. That is not a problem. It's simply an acknowledgement whenever we don't have a measurement by a laser of this Jedi, we simply acknowledge that we don't have a measurement in that area, and we leave it blank. And that's the idea. Why we do this? You will see out there other products that, for example, use Landsat to make an estimation and make a continuously variable estimation. But then there are questions on the reliability of that estimation. Then you don't know if that measurement of ecosystem height, for example, is reliable or not. In this case, we are only keeping the Jedi measurement, so we know that measurement of height is reliable, and wherever there is no measurement, we are not estimating it. That's the first different characteristic. The other is that we are doing the means for using airborne data alone. So in here we have different pathways that are typically used for the satellite data to derive those ecosystem morphological traits, or from the airborne data to derive those ecosystem morphological traits. So the work of Amaseco has mainly been about how we can join this together, how we can use both products to complement one another. And that's what we have been doing. All these black spots that you can see in there, they are airborne LiDAR transects that they have been used in this, it's a Brazilian project. Is so far only sampling 0.1, less than 0.1 of the Amazon, but still is more samples that we can add. So all the work has been about adding this airborne data to the satellite data. And what are the gains we may get from it? Well, in here you can already see that there is an area that was blank before. It was white color in there, and now it's covered by a transect, so we can add more data. More importantly, in those areas where we already had satellite data, what we can do is improve the certainty, lower the uncertainty that we have in those measurements that we obtain from the sensors. So the uncertainty here is very, very, very important. Because what we are doing with the airborne LiDAR is basically increasing the sample size enormously. And then it also gives us the possibility of the temporal dimension, because one of the problems with the Jedi mission is that it's a one-off. It will soon stop, and then we don't have other missions, neither in NASA or ESA, from here to 2030. So with the addition of airborne data, we can perhaps have that temporal dimension that we need for actual monitoring of these morphological traits. So that is the uniqueness of this product. What else we are doing then? Because we are talking about incorporating the airborne data into this global effort, then we are not going to do everything at once. We think more of the tools that can enable everybody to do a product that is common for everything. So it's a sort of a crowdsourced product, and it goes very much in the line of what Maria Londoño has been saying. So the approach that we usually have is that somebody makes a global product, and then the individual countries, we see how we can use this global product locally or regionally, too often to realize that it's not useful for our regional purposes, actually, for many reasons. This usually happens with global products. So in here we are changing it. We are changing the philosophy into the other way around. Let's give the tools so each region, each nation can create their own product in a means that is harmonized, and in the end we can have a global product that is crowdsourced. It's made by many people from different places, and this can enable us, for example, problems that sometimes there are about accessibility of data. So here we have that same philosophy. Let's have that JEDI LiDAR in the Microsoft Planetary Computer. In this case, we were doing everything with Microsoft Azure. In there, we use this RJEDI a package that we have where the tools are available, and then our product from JEDI can go to the Jobon portal. But other people can then take everybody their own national, region, local airborne LiDAR, which perhaps may be not available as such because sometimes it's sensitive information, for example, from a military viewpoint. Some countries may not want to give away their airborne LiDAR, but we can provide the tools so they can use them to derive the ecosystem morphological traits that we need and feed in the same product with everything harmonized. That's the philosophy behind. I just want to show here the full team of this Amaseco project. The face that you see here is mine, but this project is proudly Brazilian. It's mainly, the work has been mainly done by Brazilians, and that is a great thing, actually. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Thanks a lot, Ruben. Excellent presentation. And yes, please, people, share your questions in the chat so we can address them. Also, and please join the Jamboard discussion that we are having right now. I see a lot of people are joining there. So thanks a lot. That's the kind of feedback that we wish we could have. Well, Ruben, please don't leave. We'll see you on the panel at the end of the session.
See you later.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we have on our agenda a presentation from Maria Kavanaugh. She's from Oregon State University. And please, we can show her presentation in this moment to my colleague as host.
On behalf of my colleagues and I, thank you for the opportunity to share our work. Marine ecosystems will face multiple stressors in the decades to come due to climate change. These stressors are patchy and will likely overlap, so systems will face additive or synergistic pressures. Biodiversity is a first-order indicator of ecosystem responses. However, baselines are lacking. While some regions of the ocean are moderately censused, most of the global ocean is sparsely sampled, if at all. Furthermore, we rarely co-measure the appropriate environmental changes with the relevant ecological responses, and when we do, we tend to treat these interactions and the geography in which they occur as static. Landscape-level diversity metrics can indicate habitat differentiation, quality, as well as reorganization of communities. Once we acknowledge some key differences on land and sea, including the microscopic and neutrally buoyant nature of primary producers, shorter and ephemeral time scales, and diffuse dynamic boundaries, we can apply ecosystem-agnostic metrics from landscape ecology to the ocean, including identity of seascapes and the function it implies, ecosystem extent, diversity, as well as frontogenesis and the arrival of novel ecosystems. We classify seascapes in space and time using multiple satellite and model data time series. We integrate both physical and biological variables. A detail of our machine learning method is that it preserves underlying relationships between the variables, and thus the resultant classes, shown in different color patches, represent unique lower trophic level responses to physical forcing. It's dynamic, importantly, so seascapes can expand and contract and move with the motion of the water. Dynamic seascapes are classified at both global and regional spatial scales. And at regional to local scales, we collaborate with partners to survey and census multi-trophic level community composition, including phytoplankton, zooplankton, and fish, but also investigate patterns of biogeochemistry and habitat occupancy. Our classification produces two main products in near real time: seascape identity and maximum probability. Seascape identity, shown on the left, can relate to ecosystem extent and habitat diversity metrics. Maximum probability, on the right, is an attribution of uncertainty, with red colors denoting high likelihood of belonging to a particular seascape class, and cool colors showing up where water masses are mixing at fronts or where novel conditions are arising. Here we highlight how seascape time series can reveal changes in basin scale forcing of habitat extent and variability for ecologically or biologically significant areas. Shown here on the left, the animation is the time series of seascapes where they're expanding and contracting through time, shown up on the right, up on the upper part of the map. And then on the right here, it's the time series of spatial extent by different seascapes for the Papagayo upwelling system as well as the marine corridor. What we can see is that the different regions are characterized by different seascape variability, but also we can see as the spatial extent of equatorial upwelling habitats, but also productive coastal habitats decreasing during El Nino conditions. Seascapes are housed in easily accessible repositories such as NOAA's Coast Watch. Global scale seascapes maps and data are stored at weekly and monthly frequencies. And end users can preview and subset the data to ingest into their local analytical pipeline. We've also developed an R package, an R Shiny app, that facilitates access and extractions of these data for the domain of interest, such as what is shown here on the right for the MBON pole-to-pole. So to conclude, seascape habitat indices provide a means of integrating multi-platform data across multiple levels of ecological organization. These habitat level essential biodiversity indices can be used for marine ecosystem management that is relevant to EBSAs. And we welcome new collaborations and new case studies, including those focused on regional habitats and species relationships, multi-trophic level syntheses, and capacity development. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks a lot for that presentation. And now, before we move,
On behalf
no worries, just little slip. And before we go to the final presentation of this section, if you're just joining, well, those are my dogs, and please join us in the Jamboard that we have where we have prepared for you some questions regarding this section, and the links to the Jamboard is in the chat. Our final presentation on this first hour is from Enrique Montes from GeoBond and NBON. And please, Enrique, we can continue with that.
Enrique Montes, and I will present to you on behalf of a very large team a few examples of how the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network program is developing and testing interactive infographics in partnership with several national US programs like the National Marine Sanctuaries and the Integrated Ecosystem Assessment to address information and communication needs of many stakeholders, including managers and decision makers, with regards to the state of biodiversity and its relationship with environmental conditions and how these change over time across multiple jurisdictions in support of sustainable uses of marine living resources, of marine life. MBON collaborators are co-developing user-friendly tools that distill and synthesize diverse and complex biodiversity data streams from a suite of traditional measurements, such as visual surveys, and more novel techniques like environmental DNA, the use of remote sensing products like seascapes, and other applications like deep learning image processing tools to enable non-expert users visualize and communicate trends in biodiversity in a particular place through interactive infographics, and therefore address the needs and priorities of conservation and management efforts that are well described and highlighted in global frameworks like the GeoBond, the Global Ocean Observing System, the IPBES, and more recently through the Marine Life UN Decade Program. So a generalized data workflow approach MBON has recommended and adopted for the creation of these interactive infographics is very well described in this paper by Benson et al., published in the MBON special issue in Oceanography magazine. What I'm showing you here is an example of an infographic displaying a time series of different groups of the grouper snapper complex density in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, based on visual survey observations that are collected by the Reef Visual Census Program, also of NOAA. So putting together these graphical representations of the diverse functional groups in this marine protected area requires, for example, aligning field observations to the Darwin Core standard, publishing the data in the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, and then harvesting these records using the OBIS application programming interface or API. Biodiversity data tables fetched from the OBIS API can then be linked to icons as .svg files or maps and integrated with relevant environmental properties using ad hoc R packages such as the infographic, which uses a combination of JavaScript and R code to produce clickable art that acts as an interface for users to access and communicate scientific data to stakeholders. A very detailed guide to the infographic application developed by Ben Best and Jay Ranganathan is publicly available in this link that I'm showing you in this slide. The Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary off of Santa Barbara in California has developed infographics for consulting data from the habitats that are monitored within these islands. Here the user can click, for example, on the interactive kelp forest icon on the overview illustration to examine data across key taxonomic and functional groups typically present in this habitat. This can be done by clicking directly on the kelp forest icon on the overview image, or the title in the upper navigation bar that I'm highlighting here, which then displays a detailed infographic for that particular habitat, which is on the right-hand side. If the user, for example, is interested in consulting abalone density, by clicking on the abalone icon here, a modal window will pop up on top of the habitat level scene, showing time series data from multiple islands in the sanctuary down here. I am here showing you the work that is being led by Kelly Montanaro and Chris Cobble at the AOML of NOAA, and Andy Bruckner from the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, as well as many others as part of the NOAA's integrated ecosystem assessment program for communicating ecosystem health indicators that include human dimensions. This team is developing similar infographics that integrate all components of an ecosystem, including humans, into the decision-making process so that managers can actually achieve desired goals. This is an example of an infographic rendering time series of a variety of ecological and socioeconomic indicators that inform Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary managers about the health of the sanctuary. This interactive infographic is also available online in this link. And so adopting the data flow recommended by MBON and required for generating interactive infographics that I've been presenting on this presentation provides the extended benefit of enabling interaction with many other applications like the Global Explorer, the MBON Multiple website, the early alert dashboards, and the MBON data portal that are all components of the MBON program in the US and internationally. These workflows are again very well described in fair detail in this contribution by Benson et al. And I'm going to thank you, and hopefully we will receive your comments and questions. If you can contact us through these email addresses that I'm presenting on this slide. And for your information, and I'm also including the links to these different programs that are developing infographics and also the infographic R package for creating these tools. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thanks again for bringing this presentation.
Enrique Montes.
Just a quick slip. Thanks again for that presentation. And now we have to move forward with our agenda. And what we have for this part is a brief discussion about what we've seen in the first couple of questions that we have on the Jamboard. So we can put that on the screen. I'll just go for a couple of minutes looking at the answers that you have provided there. And please, if you haven't followed the link that we have in the chat, so you can also provide your answers to those questions. And I've seen also that some people have already started with the next section, so thanks a lot. That's great, but let's just focus on this part, right? So we have these two questions. The first one is about what are the challenges to access and use data, and the other one is what is needed to validate data for national use. We have these very interesting answers. Thanks again for those who have shared your opinions using this tool. And well, just to look at some of them, we can see that sometimes data is often produced and maintained in silos, and there is a lack of awareness on the ability to access across various institutions, even within a country. And I feel I relate some with that comment from our experience in Costa Rica sometimes. Also, we see a lack of capacity to access, use, and validate data in specifically national institutions. We have also a view that says that it's missing the centralized storage of data. So access sometimes to this data is difficult. For example, Drone Imaginary and some other products. We see another response here related to the capacity and funding to develop this data. Sometimes that is, they say this focus in the global north, and we see some disparities here on this, how we can generate this data. Interesting view. Also, there's a comment that's very, very important that we see here related to how to make this accessible using the Open Geospatial Consortium protocols, like the web coverage services. That's a very good suggestion of standardization. That's actually how we try to work in Costa Rica. I know there's not everything is like that, but that's the way a common standard is very useful for sharing information. We also have another response here. Sometimes data are not activated digitally, and it shows some examples. Another good answer related to what we have been discussing is that sometimes biological data should be standards should be adopted widely for operational observing of some variables, and make this data available for analysis and models and forecasting. And I think that's a very important job that MBON and GeoBON are taking care of. It's good to see this these comments to encourage that. Well, I'm just quickly go through the next question before we run out of time here. But there's also a question on what is needed to validate data from national use. And here we can see some answers like the use of national data for composite data products with global data sets only used to fill existing gaps sometimes. Well, we have another suggestions here that said that national standards with like how to validate it with national standards that are compatible with international standards. And somebody actually put a sticker there saying that he agrees on this. And but thanks a lot for supporting that comment. We also need involvement from governments and ministries to the data production. That's very true. And have access to government data, forest inventory data that is collected at a national level, but often not shared publicly. And sometimes people, this needs an infrastructure to be able to share this kind of information, mainly where there's this large amount of data in different formats. And well, that just speaking from our experience here in Costa Rica in relation to forest inventory data. And well, and we have another suggestion like adding this to national information systems like the SNIT in Costa Rica, National System of Territorial Information, or the GeoBosques and other platforms in Peru. That's very important to have these platforms. It's very helpful for these kind of purposes. Well, and if you want to continue putting your views there, I see that the Jamboard is moving in the share screen. I don't know why it doesn't doing in my computer, but thanks a lot. We'll leave this open for you, and maybe we can, now that we passed the first hour of our side event, we can move forward with the second half of it. And thanks a lot. We'll be also using the Jamboard. Maybe we can go back to it, Adriana, just to show the last question, the last section, to mention it before we start with the presentations. Are you following? Well, we have in the Jamboard. Thanks. Can we go to the last? Well, yeah. Thank you. There you can see our second question for the second half of the section, where we want to ask you how tools can be applied in different countries and regions, and what are the mechanisms to link science and users. And with those questions, we're going to start the discussion now in the second half of this section. Please follow the link to the Jamboard to provide your answers too. And we skip the break in the agenda in case you were missing it, but feel free to bring something to drink or go to the bathroom, take your time while we are going to continue, so we can have everything covered and have a nice panel in the end. So let's move forward with this presentation from Mary Blair. She is Director of Biodiversity Informatics Research at the American Museum of Natural History. And well, we can share her presentation now, please. Nice.
Hello, my name is Mary Blair. I'm the Director of Biodiversity Informatics Research at the Center for Biodiversity and Conservation at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. I'm excited to share with you today an update about our project funded through the NASA GeoBond Work Program that is a joint effort with the Columbia Biodiversity Observation Network. Our project's main goal is to expand the species distribution modeling software Wallace to better leverage remote sensing data sets in collaboration with the Columbia Bond to help support their work in biodiversity assessment and reporting, and to serve more broadly as a GeoBond in a box tool. Wallace is collaboratively developed an open source species distribution modeling software platform that allows everyone to use the same state-of-the-art software code that advanced modelers use. Wallace is a modular platform for reproducible modeling of species distributions. It's written in R with the web app development package Shiny. Wallace is user-friendly. It's a point-and-click application that includes most steps of a modeling workflow, guiding users through a complete analysis from acquisition of data to visualizing model predictions on an interactive map. It's built to be expandable so that new modules can be added easily as new methods become available. And in collaboration with the Columbia Bond, we have now expanded Wallace towards becoming a Bond-in-a-Box tool through 3 main activities. First, by developing 2 new R packages to calculate biodiversity change indicators using geo-remote sensing data and adding them to Wallace as modules. Second, by integrating Wallace with Biomodelos, the Columbia Bond's existing Bond-in-a-Box tool. And third, by creating interactive web-based training and workshop materials in multiple languages. First, we added new modules to Wallace to mask species distribution models towards better estimating species ranges. We did this by adding functions with our new R package Mask Ranger, which you can find on CRAN. And these functions post-process species distribution models, especially by using remote sensing products, such as forest cover products and others. And users can also post-process with user-defined polygons like protected areas or land cover, or with expert-defined areas. We also added new modules to calculate biodiversity change indicators from SDMs and other data. These are with new functions from our R package Change Ranger, which is not yet on CRAN, but it is available on GitHub. The indicators available to be calculated for species include IUCN's area of occupancy and extent of occurrence, also range size, percent suitable land cover, protected area representation, and also changes in these in time and space. Multi-species diversity metrics can also be calculated like species richness and species endemism. So some important questions that users can now ask and answer using Wallace include, how has a species or group of species ranges been reduced in recent years because of forest loss? How much area has been lost within protected areas? And where might a species or community lose additional suitable habitat in the future due to climate change or planned infrastructure projects? We also integrated Wallace with the Columbia Bond's existing Bond-in-a-Box tool, Biomodelos, which is a repository of expert-vetted occurrence data and models for species in Colombia. In our expanded version, Wallace users can call vetted occurrence data from Biomodelos, run through the Wallace workflow to model species, and submit completed models, biodiversity indicators, and associated metadata back to Biomodelos. Our last activity is ongoing as we finalize our software. For this, we're developing bilingual training materials as a part of the software vignettes and also as guidance text within Wallace. In addition, we'll publish a collection of training materials as open source teaching modules for the network of conservation educators and practitioners. Overall, our end users are very satisfied with our prototype software. We believe this is very much due to the way that we co-designed and tested our expansion through a series of end user consultation workshops, both in person and virtual. By co-creating these tools with our partners in the Columbia Bond, we ensured their role and participation in software development so that the translation of species distribution models and remote sensing data to bond decision-making is more relevant and sustainable beyond the lifespan of the project. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention and thank our funders and our collaborating institutions and partners on this and related projects. And I invite you to check out our website for any additional resources of interest, or if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. And especially if you're interested in beta testing our software, we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for listening.
For this presentation, and now we're going to move forward with the next agenda item with a presentation from Simon Farrier and Andrew Hoskins, both research scientists at CSIRO. If we can go with that video, please.
And good evening, everybody. My name is Simon Farrier, and shortly you will be meeting my colleague Andrew Hoskins. The gold standard of biodiversity monitoring has long been and will continue to be to apply the same survey technique at the same locations repeatedly over time. But most of the world's biodiversity data actually consist of unstructured species occurrence records collected at different locations over time. Think here of the masses of species occurrence data within GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, and also the rapidly expanding species occurrence data sets generated by citizen science smartphone apps such as iNaturalist. What we want to talk about here today is a new analytical approach to more effectively extracting the signal of biodiversity change from such data sets. This work is being undertaken as part of a project funded by the GeoBon and Microsoft AI for Earth EBVs on the Cloud initiative. We're working with CSIRO's OBSPARE GDM technique to detect change in species composition of communities as a function of environmental change across both space and time. We're also aiming to make this analytical capability more widely available for use around the world through the Microsoft Azure Cloud Computing Platform. And finally, we're demonstrating the value of this new capability through case studies using data for Bolivia and for Australia.
A critical component to the success of this project is our integration with Microsoft Azure Cloud architectures and, most importantly, the Microsoft Planetary Computer. By building our solution in this platform, we are able to rapidly and easily access the latest snapshots of the entire GBIF database, ensuring that we're constantly using the most up-to-date biological information available. The computing power of Azure then enables us to rapidly clean, filter, and pre-process these data into any spatial and/or taxonomic subsets that are required for downstream analytics. We then fuse these biological records with the best available remote sensing datasets for capturing change in the Earth's surface, alongside past to present recreations of ecologically important climatic surfaces. Again, process is made easy via the Azure Cloud ecosystem, where we clip and harmonize these datasets to ensure they align with our modeling domain, then aligning them to the location and time of each of our biological observations. These fused biological and environmental data are then passed to CSIRO's OBSPARE GDM technique, which enables us to disentangle and report the signal of ecological change from within this data fusion. However, we also recognize that not all available biological or environmental datasets are available through publicly accessible sources, and that's why our approach is being built to be flexible enough to allow user-provided inputs of both novel biological and environmental data for any region of interest. This analytical pipeline is being made easily accessible and repeatable through the use of Jupyter notebooks, which enable users to access, visualize, interrogate, and deploy this analytical approach with ease. This slide shows an example of the types of output that we are capable of generating through this analytical system. On the left, you can see the combination of different biological observation records and environmental datasets into our analytical process. Following the processing and estimation stages supported by Jupyter notebooks in the Azure system, we can then generate spatially continuous estimates of the differences in ecological communities right across our modeling domains. In the central plots, you can see visualizations of the differences in plant communities across Bolivia for 2 different time points. The triplot in the center shows the disentangling of the different drivers of these compositional differences. And on the right, you can see the change in local plant communities as a result of changes in local land use and climatic patterns between 2001 and 2009, where green shows no change and yellow shows moderate changes.
Just to conclude, it's important to note that this analytical technique that we've talked about here fits into a much bigger framework of assessment and decision support tools. The essential biodiversity variables that can be generated with our tool can be combined with other EBVs to derive various indicators, including, for example, the indicators that CSIRO has worked on for a number of years now, such as the Biodiversity Habitat Index, and these are designed to, in turn, feed into informing various assessment and policy processes under, for example, the CBD or UNCEA ecosystem accounting. Thanks very much for your time, and don't hesitate to get in touch with Andrew or myself if you want to discuss any further what we've talked about today. Thank you.
Hi, thanks a lot. A great presentation. And now we're going to move forward with a live presentation from colleagues who I have the pleasure to work with in Costa Rica. They are Enrique Paniagua, he's a collaborator from UNDP, and Cornelia Miller, director of the PRIAS laboratory at the National Center of High Technology of Costa Rica. Thanks again, colleagues, for joining us. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Rafa. Is there a possibility that you can share the screen?
Yes, Adrian is going to provide support with that. Now we can see it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, hello. First, thank you for having us here in this event. My name is Enrique Paniagua, and together with Cornelia Miller, we will present the project Mapping Nature for People and Planet in Costa Rica. Next one. Well, I am a climate adaptation planning specialist at the Ministry of Environment of Costa Rica, and my colleague Cornelia, she's the director of PRIAS Lab in Costa Rica. Next one. So, what is ELSA? UNDP launched ELSA in 2019 along with other partners, and Costa Rica was the first pilot country. The Ministry of Environment and PRIAS Lab have been leading the project as national leaders in Costa Rica. Maybe it is important to mention that ELSA stands for Essential Life Support Areas, and that these are areas that, if protected, restored, and sustainably managed, can offer benefits related to food security, water security, climate change, etc. The project aims at mapping ELSAs to promote science-based policies and decision-making around nature. We know that science-based policymaking is a challenge in many developing countries, and we want to contribute with solving this issue. The project also wants to take nature out of the conservation silo to encourage a multi-sectoral approach to nature. Everyone needs nature, and we need nature to achieve several of the Sustainable Development Goals, and ELSA wants to contribute with this multi-sectoral view. Next one. So the main steps that we take to develop ELSA maps are the following. First is to identify the national priorities related to nature-based solutions. So we conduct public policy analysis to identify these priorities. Then we collect data sources related to each policy priority that has been selected out of the many the different targets that we find. We select 10, and we find data for these priorities. Then we combine the data later with the policy priorities to finally produce an ELSA map that highlights the most important areas to intervene to achieve these national priorities. The next one. The next one, please, Adriana. Oh.
Sorry, just an error. I'll try again. It didn't let me move the slides.
No worries. Yeah, I was just about to share with you the results of the second iteration that we conducted last year. And we have another iteration focusing climate adaptation we will see in a moment. So this is the map of the second iteration. You can see here the areas that are suggested for protection. This is including existing protected areas, and then the areas suggested to restore, manage, and in the case of Costa Rica, we also have urban greening areas. The next one, please. So some of the emerging synergies for the results that we have obtained are the following. We want to develop a marine ELSA, because this is the iteration that we have now is only focusing in land, and now we want to expand the analysis to marine, but it takes another whole analysis. Then we also want to contribute with the strategic environmental evaluation in Costa Rica. We want to make the results available for improving the payment of ecosystem services scheme that has been so successful in Costa Rica, but we are looking to improve it further. And then we also want to inform the national strategy for landscape restoration, specifically for the implementation of this strategy. And the two processes that we are impacting so far are the following. The State of the Environment report and the ministry will present in 2022. That is going to offer the overview of the country in terms of environment, and then the climate adaptation national plan that I'm leading. The following, please. And this is the iteration that is particular for climate adaptation. This you can say this is the first. It could be the first ecosystem-based adaptation map. And what we are looking for is to contribute with ensuring ecosystem services for human well-being, with promoting ecosystem adaptation to climate change, and to reducing human vulnerability to climate events, which is the ultimate goal of climate adaptation. So this is a very particular application of ELSA that is informing the climate adaptation plan. Next one, please. And now I will give the floor to my colleague Cornelia, and she will explain the data side of this process.
Thank you, Enrique. So here we are. This is a way where there is the bridge between science and policy. So we have the policy priorities of the country regarding environment, and the data layers that finally were created to work with the maps. Next one, please. So the data used for this project comes from different places. One is the GeoBond Stanford University layers that have been doing a great work here in Costa Rica from a few years ago now. There are international layers that are available already, and national layers. Next one. Oh, sorry, can we go back a little bit? Yes, so here are the results. Those are the maps. We have human well-being, ecosystem carbon, biodiversity, ELSA. That is the one that unites the other three. So our decision makers can have a better idea or where to prioritize activities for protect, restore, manage, and urban greening. Next one, please. Okay, so the background for these maps, we divide the data into groups. One are the features that have the three objectives you can read over there. And there's where we have the most of the data layers that I'll show you briefly at the beginning of my intervention. And then the other group are the zones, the blocking options and actions to execute. So there are different options in every one of the two groups, and depending on what the person needs to analyze. Thank you. Next one.
So here is very important. There are like the human beings is the most important, and their ideas. And here we have the Minister of Environment of the moment where ELSA started. And then we had our international counterpart that work along with the minister making this possible. Next one. And here is almost, the first group that we're working in this in the first iteration. And the thing is, you need all these people. You need the time of them. So and get decisions and make negotiations and have this very interest in find the solutions for our country, and then for it to be transferable to other countries. So this is very important. At the end, human beings are behind of the solutions, nature-based solutions. And I think this is very an important part of maps, that it seems that it's only like one figure there, like really easy, but it has a lot of work behind it, not only curating the data and making the map algebra, but working with the persons that know the territory, that know the policies, to make a better decisions for our decision makers. And next one, I think I'm finished. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for that presentation, Cornelia and Enrique. And also, as part of this project, I wanted to highlight that we wanted to share this presentation because it's one use case that shows how we can bring together data. For example, this kind of data we have produced with the framework of GeoBond and the essential biodiversity variables to put this into a policy framework and validate it for national use. There's also, as Enrique explained, a potential to connect with marine bond in the future with or marine with that focus with this project that can be also part of it. And yeah, we wanted to wave this together, this amazing work with this event. Actually, colleagues from Geosecretariat are listening. You wanted us to have a coordinated event to make more bonding with each other, and yes, you have achieved that. I'm sure that we will have more opportunities to coordinate in the future. After we move to the next section, I want to remind you to visit the Jamboard, where we have the last question for this part of this side event, and we want to see your views. This is also going to guide our discussion during the panel in the end of this section. So please join us there. The links are in the chat. And now we will move forward with our last live presentation in this for this event. We have Arlene Young from she's director of Belize National Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute, and Arlene is live with us today. Please, Arlene, you can take the floor now. Arlene, are you there? I can't hear you. I don't know. I don't know if colleagues can confirm if you're listening to Arlene. I don't. Anyone can assist me there? Here. Okay, I see that Arlene just dropped off this call. Maybe we can get her back. And in the meantime, let's also remind again to use this Jamboard. We have this question that we want to talk in the next section related on how tools can be applied in different countries and regions, and what are the mechanisms to link science and users. These questions are in the in a whiteboard in this Jamboard that where you just have to put some stickers there, and we would like to comment on those questions in the next section. Let's see. That Arlene is not there yet. I hope that my colleagues, co-hosts, Joanna or Adriana, are trying to reach out to her. Yeah, I see her online. Hi, Arlene.
Hello, yes, can you hear me and see me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Sorry, I just had to log in and log back out. It happens when you're live.
Don't worry. We're going very good, actually. So,
Okay, so let me get my presentation up. Okay, can you see the screen now?
yes, it's all set.
Okay, great. So today my presentation is on the artificial intelligence for the Belize National Marine Habitat Map. And I'm going to share a bit about how it is supporting marine spatial planning and the development of a sustainable blue economy for Belize. My name is Arlene Young, and I am the Director of the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute in Belize. Just briefly, I'll share an intro about the project team, the goals, some of the activities, workflows, the draft results, and then get into a bit of a discussion about how the updated maps are being used to support marine spatial planning. So this initiative is through a partnership with the Belize Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute, located in Belize, here in Central America. You can see is bordered to the north by Mexico. And we are partnering with GRH Consulting, which is a firm based in Alabama. And Professor Griffin and Dr. Charrington are also affiliated with the University of Alabama. And just to say a bit about the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute, I have some members of the team here displayed. We are responsible for leading the sustainable use and plan development of Belize's coastal zone. The agency have both a policy arm and an institute which is responsible for the data collection, monitoring, and reporting. In Belize, our coastal resource base, our natural capital, are very important. It's the foundation of key economic sectors like tourism and fisheries, and it also provides important functions, ecosystem services such as shoreline protection. And so this project here today, which is under the collaboration with Microsoft and the GeoBond for the first EBV call, was to update the National Marine Habitat Map, which really is over 2 decades old. And the idea was to use Microsoft Azure's cloud computing software, as well as satellite data, field data, to develop a new updated finer scale map. Some of the key activities including data collection both in the field as well as looking at historic and recent data, capacity building, remote sensing, and most importantly, communicating and outreach, working with key stakeholders. The image on the far left shows staff in the field collecting underwater videos and imagery. As well, the table in the middle shows a list of organizations. One of the important things to note is that this project is a highly collaborative effort, and it wouldn't be possible without all our partners on the ground, both government and non-government, who have provided data to support the mapping activities. And this is showed visually on the far right. So we've done several training, stakeholder workshops, communication to present the project, to validate, to share preliminary results nationally as well as regionally and internationally through various platforms. The workflow here shows the inputs to the machine learning system, in generating the draft habitats and using existing maps as well as field data to validate and arrive at the final marine habitat map. So a range of satellite data were used, particularly using the virtual machine on Azure, and additional processing were done with other imagery as well. So we're here at the draft marine habitat map, and this is a picture or a map showing, the coverage of key ecosystems, very important to Belize, such as seagrass, coral reefs, and the classes are 6 classes, and this is more finer scale compared to the first version of the map, where there were majority, I think over 30 subclasses. So this focuses on key ecosystems that are important for decision making. And a key process that we're currently engaged in is the updating of Belize's integrated coastal zone management plan, which is a blueprint for Belize. And the data is very timely from this updated marine habitat map, so that we can update our habitat layers. And one of the tools used to inform this plan was the INVEST tool, the Ecosystem Service Analysis through the Natural Capital Project. And so this data is important for updating our habitat risk assessment model and getting new habitat risk assessment maps. Additionally, we rely a lot on habitat data for looking at coastal risk and identifying adaptation strategies to inform, building resilience in key coastal communities. So this spatial information is very critical for Belize. As well, the coastal zone is housed within the ministry with responsibility for blue economy. And so one of the key things is assessing the opportunities for various sectors to be developed as part of Belize's blue economy model. In terms of the next steps, the map has been validated. We're doing final processing, and the next steps will be to share the final map as well as the data sets and determine the timeline and mechanisms for updating the map on a more regular basis, and not waiting an entire decade or more to do this, since we have now access and knowledge of using similar software that can get the work done in a more efficient and timely manner. So in conclusion, the final marine habitat map is really providing evidence-based data to support policy development and planning in Belize. And it will also help us to continue to support the protection and management of Belize's important ecosystems and marine habitats. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlene, for that excellent presentation on Belize case study. And now we're going to move to our panel discussion to finish or wrap up this side event. I would like to ask all the panelists that are appointed for this session to also join us here. I'm only seeing Arlene's screen right now. Can we put us all in the spot, I guess? Well, I'm not sure if the other people is there. I'm only seeing Arlene's picture in the screen. Thank you. Now I see Ruben, hi, Frank, Cornelia, and Enrique. Hello, thanks again for your presentations today and for joining this panel session that we have to end our discussion. here now we're going to talk about how tools can be applied in different countries and regions, and we're also going to be to use some of the information that you're also providing using the Jamboard, where we put this question there. But I wanted to start this discussion with Frank, to see your views on the, as you were from the beginning, presenting in the beginning, and now that you have seen all these presentations, initiatives, and use cases. How do you see that we're achieving using this way to connect and use technology and data? And also people have mentioned standards and GeoBond and MBond, and providing some inputs with that, with the EBBs, and I wanted to know your views on those presentations.
Yeah, thank you, Rafael. I'm very impressed with the progress that we have all made with different satellite observations and models, and I think those are really incredible steps forward. I still think that we have to find a way to convince biologists and people that try to look at ecosystem services to collect data in a way that is standardized, or if not for everything, share some of the data for specific variables that we all agree can be useful for indicators, and then that can be merged with satellite data to develop some models. So I think that we, as a community, both the marine, the freshwater, and the terrestrial community, have to come together and agree in sharing a little bit more data. The other thing that I saw is that we're still working in silos, and I think that we don't need to do that anymore. We see the land people always mask out the ocean. It also always looks like it's gray or black or one single color. And the ocean people always put a mask on the land. And it's, if we are thinking about these ecosystems are connected. And so I think it's very important to try to find a way, if we're going to look at biodiversity and an ecosystem extent, that we erase that artificial boundary, which is really a boundary between communities, but it's not a boundary on a real planet. So I see that also at the country level. We manage things at the level of small areas within a country, or in Colombia or in Costa Rica. But how can we do this at a larger scale using the same tools? Now, all of this takes money, and so ultimately, what's the big obstacle we have is sponsorship to do all of this at a much larger scale and over a longer time.
Thanks, Frank. And following up with that answer, I wanted to ask Ruben, how do you see that, how we can scale up? And you presented a very interesting project that is using the EBB ecosystem structure and also LiDAR data. But yeah, this takes money, this takes knowledge, and how we can scale up. Do you feel that you're working in silos there too?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's true. Well, the first focus has to be on the tools, on making the tools available. I think the R programming has actually gone long stretches with those regards lately, because it became something that everybody was saying, I want to do something here that is openly available for the whole of society from the offset, really. Like, you're working on R packages, and it's an open source language, and the whole thing is going to be open source. That comes with some computing efficiency problems, but that seems to be now going forward with the Jupyter notebooks, which is great. In the end, we're talking about the same thing, making those available so we can join the non-specialist, because what I do is very specialized, some processing of LiDAR data, and not everyone needs to know that, especially those people specialized in ecology. So really just bringing the tools So those can be employed to just derive ecosystem morphological traits. I was also now thinking of what Frank was saying about masking the ocean. And there are more limitations than that. I've been showing this Jedi data with the whole of the world, and indeed the ocean is not in there, but I didn't mask it out. There is a physical limitation of the infrared infrared beam that is used from the satellite that doesn't reach. But we have bathymetric LiDAR that can also be used alongside, but that has to be from a vessel. So in that sense, it goes in the same direction. Always let's try to, what is most important is to do tools that are relevant for any type of ecosystem for any country, and then make those tools available.
Thanks a lot, Ruben. And well, I'm not seeing Cornelia there, but Enrique, there's a comment in the Jamboard that's saying that communication is also key, and providing examples with documentation and also funding is key to produce this kind of work. So I wanted to know your views on that.
Thank you very much, Rafa. Indeed, it's super important the way that we communicate this work and the results, especially if we want to engage other sectors and make this available to other other people working outside the conservation and the biodiversity area. So here in Costa Rica, for example, we are working with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Housing as well. So it's a whole effort of understanding what places we have to conserve, we have to restore and sustainably manage. And this, I think, really helps to ultimately protect nature, but from a very, consistent approach from the different sectors. So communication is key. We need to provide the decision makers with the right information, not only raw data or maps, but how to interpret those maps and what actions they need to take to really make the data actionable, right? So this is certainly important. And then funding is definitely a key issue. Without the funding, we cannot conduct the analysis and the science that needs to be conducted to create better policies. And without better policies, we have less action, and less action leads to what is happening right now, which is the destruction of nature. So it's a whole cycle, and we need to take care of every single step.
Thanks a lot, Enrique. And Cornelia, from your the science perspective, you show in your presentation about how this tool is using different sources of data, national and international. And I see a lot of opportunities engaging with people not, from Costa Rica and from outside our frontiers to develop this kind of tools and also promote them and use them in other countries like this ELSA project is doing. How do you feel about these connections that are being made with the ELSA and now with this side event that we're having with you?
Thank you, Rafael. Yes, I think it's a great opportunity for everyone, and to have all this data available, which is an effort of the world, of the countries that have the satellites going around the planet and collecting this data for us to translate it into something that we all can understand. So this is why I say that there's a bridge between science and technology and the policy, because it is needed to learn a little bit from one another, like different languages, and to have an outcome like these maps where we can make decisions. And using these maps, using the data, is very important too for everyone. So I think we're heading into the GIS-based, I was thinking thinking in my country, but maybe I think I want to go abroad and say a GIS-based planet, as I was seeing in these presentations today. This information will help us all to take better decisions and better solutions for climate change, which is for everyone. And I'm agreed to eliminate the boundaries between the sea and the terrain, but this as well to eliminate the boundaries between countries and find the solutions all together, because that's how we see the planet, with the images collected from the satellites without boundaries. Thank you.
Thanks, Cornelia. That's a very nice thought, and that's what I wanted to also ask Arlene. Do you mask your marine maps when you use the land, or vice versa? How are you connecting with these two worlds that are very much tied together, but sometimes we see them as separated?
Yes, so I spoke a bit about the role of the organization that I work for. We're a quasi-government agency, and really, I think we're in a fairly good position to make that connection between the land-based activities and the marine activities. We have the institutional structure, although there's always room for improvement in communication and collaboration. But the nature of why the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute was established was to ensure that integration and that ridge to reef approach of managing our natural resources. And so that is the approach that we use. And in terms of the work that we do, spans across sectors, both, looking from agriculture and impacts the marine, as well as those key marine-based sectors like shipping, fishing. So we do have some coordination mechanisms in place, and we try our best to ensure that integration.
Arlene, thanks a lot for your intervention. And also, my video has been turned on. Now I'm there. I hope you can see me. Thanks a lot for your intervention, and thanks to everyone who has been a panelist in this event, and also to the people who have joined. On the interest of time, we have to close up. We're worried that the platform will kick us out or anything, but just to express my gratitude to the team that has been working on the preparation of this side event. It's been an exciting experience. I learned a lot from our preparation and the discussions that we had today. There are a lot of things to follow up, and this is a good thing. I would love to be having this discussion in presence so we can have a chat after this event and learn from each other better, but maybe we will have opportunities for that in the future, I hope. The platform has helped us to interact this way from my house, and that's something that we have to recognize too. Thanks a lot to the GEO Secretariat and to our colleagues from Marine Bond and from GEO Bond, and of course UNDP and all my colleagues that were here from PRIA's laboratory. Thanks a lot for your participation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of GEO Week 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.